time I tell my story and I come back to my story, I get to bring everything that I've learned about the world and about myself since the last time I told it. Help them see that, technical skills are great, but technical skills are often such a small part of employment. So assessment. So first I have to say that I do love Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It is my favorite BuzzFeed quiz. And I say it that way all the time because that's what it is. It's a BuzzFeed quiz. It's important not in what it shows, but in how it makes you think about yourself. Assessment isn't a bad thing. Assessment is a great thing, but it's what is done with the assessment that's important, not the assessment itself.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of Hoda's Career Info. I am your host, Hoda, and I cannot wait for you to meet Noah Arney. Noah is a Career Services Coordinator with Thompson Rivers University and a Certified Career Development Professional. Noah began his career as a high school teacher, then changed course, and has been in post-secondary student affairs since 2010. In that time, he has worked as an academic advisor, career advisor, associate registrar, program administrator, and work integrated learning coordinator. Noah has a Bachelor of Arts with a major in English, an extended minor in theater, and a Bachelor of Education. He is currently finishing his Master of Education in Educational Research at the University of Calgary, and his research focuses on Indigenous students' perception of work-integrated learning. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts and feedback on my conversation with Noah Arney and his innovative ideas. Welcome, Noah Arney, to my show. I am very, very happy that you decided to join me and come in and share your experience and your thoughts. You know that I always start my show by asking my guests to find a career term and to define it from your perspective, of course, Noah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me onto the show. So the career term that I want to talk about is storying. So by that, I mean the aspect of telling your story. So in this case, the story of how you got to where you are and where you want to go after. And so that's how we create our personal narrative, by telling our story and learning more about ourselves through the telling. So I see it as being an aspect of narrative career counseling. So when I tell you about myself, I'm putting into words how I see myself. You, as an outsider, get to see things in my story that are either explicit or implicit or unexamined, that I haven't noticed or that I haven't thought deeply about. And so by working together, I can tell and retell my story. And in so doing, I can learn more about myself. So it's an iterative process, a circular process, where each time I tell my story and I come back to my story, I get to bring everything that I've learned about the world and about myself since the last time I told it. So whether that's, going between, weeks or months or days or years between telling the story, and we get to bring back the new things that we have learned since then. And on the other side, as you hear the story as I tell it, told in different ways, you get to see the shape of things that I haven't fully understood yet. And so you get to help me understand my own story by asking questions about my story and helping me to delve deeper into it, and really helping me to be reflexive in my storytelling. And then the time that I tell the story next, I'm going to take what I have learned about myself since the last time I told my story, and it's going to change how I talk about myself again. And that's a process of creation of our story. And I'm I like to call that term storying. So that's the career term I wanted to put out there for people today.
Thank you for sharing the term storying. I don't think I've heard it before. We've always been talking within the Canadian field about storytelling or sharing your story. And I think we will be hashtagging storying moving forward. I like it. And speaking of telling stories, I would like to ask you to share with the audience your background, I guess your story, not dig deep in it too much and try to change it for you, but really to get to know you and more importantly, tell us about the title that defines your current role.
Yeah. So I've been a student affairs professional for over 10 years now, and I really like that title of student affairs professional. So I'm now a faculty member at Thompson Rivers University, and I'm a career services coordinator there. But I see student affairs as being the big tent for those of us who work in post-secondary with students, especially for those of us who aren't primarily instructors. And it really gets broken out into smaller groups, of course, recruitment and admissions and orientation, financial aid and international education often sort of break off into their own groups, and residence life often goes into their own groups. But really, it's all of these things, and student life and athletics and counseling and career advising and academic advising, and accessibility and conduct and assessment. And all of these things sort of come together as the people who support the students in their learning beyond the classes. And so I see student affairs as being the broad category for all of that. So my official title, of course, is co-op coordinator, because all of us at TRU have that title for the faculty and career services. But so I'm the career services coordinator there, and I provide career advising and career development support to students and to alumni at TRU, as well as workshops and other events. So how I got there, and here's where we get back to that storying thing, is actually through teaching. So I was a high school teacher in BC, and I graduated from my teacher program in the middle of BC, sort of cutting back on the number of teachers in the province, increasing class sizes and such. So it was an interesting time to be a teacher, but I did get a job, and I was teaching in Lytton for about a year. And while I was there, one of the things I was doing was also overseeing the work experience course and the graduate transitions courses. So I got to begin getting into the career development work there. When I moved back down to the Fraser Valley, where I was from, I started working at Native Education College as an adult basic education teacher. And I did that for about another year. And then they hired me in to be their academic and career advisor. And that job was amazing, and I learned so much. And that was where I found my calling of student affairs, was at Native Ed. And so from there, I moved to Calgary for about 6 years. And I worked for the Niskin Center there, doing programming and doing career advising and academic advising for Indigenous STEM students. And then I transitioned into their career services department, and now I've moved over to Thompson Rivers University. So that's sort of the quick version of it. And I always like to sort of start with that, started as a high school teacher, and sort of that transition into working with adults, and that transition into the student affairs aspect. And how career development has sort of been the thread that kind of connects all of those positions.
Thank you for sharing, Noah. I always want my guests to be known to the audience, not just their thoughts, but also a little bit where you come from. So I appreciate you sharing your experience so far. Also, part of this show is I always go and Google my guests and see what I can find on their social media platforms or websites. And for you, what caught my attention is on your Twitter account. On your Twitter account, for a while you were trending a hashtag, skills for success. Can you share with the audience the importance of this hashtag to you, and why was it trending?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of skills frameworks. I see them as a great way to identify the transferable skills that you have and to improve yourself. So the reason why I was trying to get skills for success trending is that Canada recently replaced the essential skills framework with the new skills for success framework. So it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be, because it's a tool that can be used by those of us in career development. And so I've been talking online quite a bit recently about it. I had a short article come out with CareerWise talking about why the new framework is important, and what it means for those of us who work in career development. But the big thing is that the new framework is really tied into helping people understand what skills are and how they connect into lots of different areas. And I think it can be a really strong tool for those who work primarily in the qualitative side, because it's going to help us to work with students to understand their own skills a little bit better, and understand how different skills interact with each other, and what their skills are, what they're good at, and help them see that, technical skills are great, but technical skills are often such a small part of employment. They are such a small part of life compared to things like communication and critical thinking, and the ability to access and interpret information, and the ability to work closely with others, and all of these different skills. Those are what really makes so many of our lives what they are. And so that's why I've been talking recently on Twitter about Skills for Success, is because that new framework has come out, and it's probably going to become quite a big thing in Canada over the next few years. It's just sort of beginning. I know there's a number of people who are a little upset that many of the things that they used the Essential Skills Framework for haven't been built into Skills for Success yet. That's going to come, but yeah. So that's why I was talking so much about Skills for Success.
I'm glad you shared it, and I will try to put the links into Skills for Success and to your article in the comments section, so everyone can really follow and get a better understanding of this framework. And working with students through their job application process, I guess, what are your thoughts on job applications, on resumes and cover letter today?
Yeah, so application documents are what I consider to be both the most and least important things. So they're the most important because that's the outcome people are wanting. That when a student comes to me wanting to talk about job applications and resumes and cover letters, that's sort of their outcome, because this is okay, I'd like to get a job, so I need to go through this process. I need to create this thing. But it's produced from good career development work. So it's the least important because it's the outcome of the work that needs to happen. There's a lot of work that goes in first about knowing yourself, knowing what you're great at, knowing where your passions are, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing why you're even interested in the position you're applying for. What is it about that excites you? All of that has to come first. And so when I work with students, I try to help them see this as the outcome of the work that they need to do first. And so it's very important, because that outcome is going to be what other people see. That is going to be what an employer sees when they are looking at them. But that's not where the student's focus needs to be first. The student's focus first needs to be on the things that lead up to it. Really understanding yourself, really understanding your technical skills and transferable skills, and where those are, and what you're good at, and what you need to do some work on, and how you adapt to things, and how you change up your plans based on things that happen, and really truly knowing yourself before you're really able to get to that outcome part of the job application, with the documents, the resume, the cover letter, portfolios, things like that. Those come from knowing yourself.
I absolutely agree. Self-knowledge and self-awareness, I think, is the basis of any resume or cover letters. It just gives you that boost to know what you're writing, even in the cover letter, if you know yourself. And you do have, though, an interesting view on the value of tests and assessments if we were to use them to help our clients define their career dreams, which some may not agree with you, some may, but we'll see. I'd like to have you share your perspective and see what people think of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so assessment. So first I have to say that I do love Myers-Briggs type indicator. It is my favorite BuzzFeed quiz. And I say it that way all the time because that's what it is. It's a BuzzFeed quiz. It's important not in what it shows, but in how it makes you think about yourself. It's not going to tell you, oh, you need to do this, but it's going to say, oh, hey, these are other people who answered these questions ended up with this result. What do you think about that? And so for assessments, I lean very heavily towards the qualitative assessments. With the goal of assessment shouldn't be to tell somebody what to do, but rather to help them identify possibilities they hadn't considered, help them to think about where they want to go, what type of work they want to do, what type of person they might be. So assessments, like MBTI, are a great tool. I often will use it with students, having them talk about it. But really, it's just that. It's one tool to help people reflect. And it's that reflection part that's important. That when somebody does an assessment, the results of the assessment are less important than how the person thinks about the results of the assessment. Because that's going to be where that work happens. That's going to be where you start saying, oh, well, so I'm it says that I'm an introvert, but am I really an introvert? Okay. Am I really an extrovert? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for the type of work I like to do? It says that I tend to be a judging person. What does that mean for me? What does that how is that reflected in the work I've done recently? How is that reflected in the work I've done a long time ago? And so that's what I mean by saying that it's not great in and of itself. It's great in how it can be used. It's great as a starting point for, okay, well, let's talk about that now. There's a great article that came out a couple of years back, I think, about using these type of assessments as the basis of narrative assessment or narrative career counseling, where you're using this as a jumping off point for talking about your past, for talking about your potential futures, for talking about what your path could be and where you see yourself developing, and whether you think the assessment was showed you something interesting about yourself, or if you disagree a lot with it, or what parts of it do you agree with, and what does that mean? So it gives people a starting point for their self-reflection. And that's where assessment needs to be important, because assessment that categorizes somebody, an assessment that divides groups of people, isn't that useful. What's useful is assessment that helps somebody learn about themselves, or assessment that helps somebody develop themselves, or to learn more, or to change. That's where assessment needs to be, not in the categorization or dividing into groups or any of that, or determining who's better at something, or determining what groups of people what groups of people are together, or any of that. What it's useful for is helping people to start identifying things in themselves, and as a point for themselves to start learning about themselves. That's where I think assessment needs to be, and that's where I think assessment needs to be focused. And I know that anybody who's very strong into the more cognitive behaviorist type of work, I'm sure is not happy with that perspective on it. But that's sort of where I fall, is that it's not assessment isn't a bad thing. Assessment is a great thing, but it's what is done with the assessment that's important, not the assessment itself.
I think I agree with you, but just to clarify, so you're saying that we take the assessments and with your storying as a base, would you take that any test that of your choice, I guess, and use it as a base to get the storying going?
Exactly. Say, okay, well, so for example, I mentioned that I like Myers-Briggs, so I'm an INTJ. Okay, so what does that mean for me? Well, it means that I like to take long periods of time for myself to recharge. It means that when I'm in big groups of people, I know that I need to have time later to recover. Well, that's not actually being told to me from the INTJ thing. It's something that I learned about myself, and it's something that I look at myself and say, yeah, that is how I react to things. Other people react to that the same way. Oh, okay. Well, what can I learn about myself from this? Well, I can learn that, I can be that energetic person meeting new people in big groups and have planned out time to go relax and watch some Netflix afterward. Right? That's what it helps with. It helps you to begin identifying things within yourself. Regardless of what the assessment says, you then take that and you say, okay, well, what does that mean for me? That the assessment can be used as one of the starting points for things like storying or other narrative assessments or other qualitative evaluations of yourself. That it's one of the questions you can use as the basis of your reflection. Is, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean for me? How do I agree with that? How do I disagree with that? Is there anything in there that you saw and you thought, no, that's not me. I don't know what's going on here. And it's that type of reflection that helps people to better understand themselves.
Absolutely. So it does help with what we talked about, the self-knowledge. And so, but I agree with you, not to rely on it 100% and say, this is it. No, there's got to be some reflection beyond that for sure. Well, these are all the questions I had for you, Noah, today. And I was wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to add or anything that you were hoping I would ask you, but didn't.
I think you've really sort of asked a pretty good spread of questions. I really like to get to come on here and talk a little bit more about sort of the qualitative work that I focus on for career advising and how that works and sort of how other people can use it as well. And I think the big takeaway for the people watching this is probably the idea of helping people to tell their story and to understand what that story means, and that their story is going to change over time. When we have, especially people with very strong senses of their own careers, if they are changing career paths, that can be very hard. And so helping them to say, okay, what's your story? What does that mean? What's the next step? And how is your story going to change? And helping them to create their new narrative about themselves as they transition from one career into another career, as they transition from one type of work into another type of work, as they transition from being in university to being outside of university. That sort of work, a lot of it happens as you develop your own personal narrative. And that's where I see this storying idea as being strong.
And such an important stage. I mean, as we transition, we do need to get to know each other so that we understand that the next step is of value to us or not. Thank you so much, Noah, for your time. I look forward to further collaborations, maybe another one just to talk about the cognitive approaches and theories. Thank you so much, and welcome again.
Well, thank you so much. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for joining me and Noah Arney in this episode of Huda's Career Info. I hope you enjoyed listening to it and learning about Noah Arney's perspective on assessments. I cannot wait to hear your reaction to his views. You can learn more about the work of Noah on his website, noaharney.com, and you can connect with him on LinkedIn or Twitter. He is very active on Twitter for sure. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, keep moving forward in productive ways.